واتبعوا ما تتلو الشياطين على ملك سليمان وما كفر سليمان ولكن الشياطين كفروا يعلمون الناس السحر وما أنزل على الملكين ببابل هاروت وماروت وما يعلمان من أحد حتى يقولا إنما نحن فتنة فلا تكفر فيتعلمون منهما ما يفرقون به بين المرء وزوجه وما هم بضارين به من أحد إلا بإذن الله ويتعلمون ما يضرهم ولا ينفعهم ولقد علموا لمن اشتراه ما له في الآخرة من خلاق ولبئس ما شروا به أنفسهم لو كانوا يعلمون.
The other part about this passage that is important for us to remember is that unfortunately Bani Israel, like other religious communities, they went from being practitioners of pure tawheed, of pure religion, and then after a time they slipped into this syncretic form of they began to blend Judaism with essentially occultism. And this is because the Jews were essentially, for a period of time were expelled from Palestine and had to go live in Babylon. And when the Jews were in Babylon, as we know, in Babylon, in Babil, the people there were mushrikun, right? They were pagans, and they were also occultists, meaning that they were into magic and all of this, very, very superstitious, right? So Babylon was a very superstitious culture. It was a powerful culture because Babylon was actually able to put a whooping on a lot of its neighbors, right? And it's true. There's no doubt that America and even the West to some extent bears a lot of the characteristics of Babylon, a sophisticated, powerful, militarily, technologically powerful culture, but also very steeped in superstition and makes a melting pot of everything. Matter of fact, we love to say that about America. America is the great melting pot. There is some truth to that analogy. And therefore the Jews, after a period of time of being in Babylon, began to mix pure Judaism, which is, if we remember, pure Judaism was a revelation from Allah, right? Pure Judaism is why Allah says that there are believers from amongst the people of the book. But in Babylon, they began to mix their religion with all of the superstitious nonsense. And this was still prevalent to the day of the Prophet ﷺ, right? This is why the last two surahs at least in the Mus'haf, right? Surah al-Falaq and Surah al-Nas, as we know, these two surahs, they're called al-Mu'adhatain. These are the two surahs that are recited for protection, right, against this. And specifically, the Prophet ﷺ had some type of black magic put on him by a Jew from Yathrib, and Allah revealed these two surahs when they recited to him. Like they had a particular form of magic where you nafathati fil uqad, right, of making knots, and when you blow on knots, it does some type of thing, and it actually made the Prophet ﷺ ill. So when the Prophet arrives and begins to encounter the Jews and talking to the Jews and challenging them and trying to correct them on some of their religious practices, they become uncomfortable about this and then relate to them. No, it's true. You guys, when you went to Babylon, you began to mix your religion with other things. And so this, particularly for us, it just gives us even more credence, more importance to keep our religious practices pure and separate. And we see that challenge happening here in America. America has so many cultural practices, and some of them seem very innocent, and say, well, what harm it is in it if we do a little bit of Christmas, if we do a little bit of Halloween, if we do a little bit of this and that, and then the next thing we just do a little bit of lucky numbers and so on, right? It shows how that slippery slope of descending into mixing religion with superstition, which is one of the primary things that Islam comes to do away with, not only dispelling it with the pagans, right? And we talked about that, I think, 2 sessions ago, right? When the descendants of Ismail, right, the son of Ibrahim, right, the descendants of Ismail, they themselves fell into idolatrous practices where they began to worship the idol of Hubal, that they began to do types of divination with arrows and all these other things. And these were people who were the literal descendants of one of the great prophets of Allah, Ismail alayhi salam. So Allah is also showing us that over time, repeatedly through history, one of the challenges is to try to stay pure in your religious practice. And that over time, religion and culture, right, the lines kind of blur, and when that blurring happens, culture always injects something superstitious and something impure into religion. It doesn't mean that religion has to be hostile towards culture, but it does mean it has to kind of keep a watchdog on it, so that it's actually religion that will dictate and keep an eye on culture to purify it and keep purifying it, so that it doesn't always lapse back into this kind of superstition. Instead, so religion is what informs culture versus culture predominantly informing religion.